All right, fantastic. Well, I'm pleased to be here today with Saul Lax. He is the CEO of Revenue. Welcome, Saul.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Is it Josh or Joshua? I
yeah,
know I
Josh is
presumed it was
good.
Josh.
Josh is good. Thank you.
All right.
Uh, Josh is good. So, yeah, great. So again, it's great to have you on, and maybe as a starting point, you could just give us a quick thumbnail of revenue and your background leading to
Yeah, sure.
um, the company.
Yeah, so background in a little bit in VC and investment banking. I took over a predecessor company at Revenue a little bit over 10 years ago, founded Revenue in 2020. Revenue is a fintech that specializes in providing working capital and a equivalent of a credit card to small businesses. We have 10,000 plus customers. I have about 200 employees. We're growing reasonably quickly, and we're centered on U.S. Customers. Broad distribution. We're not any particular place in the U.S. We have a lot of the usual suspects as partners that are other fintech companies, the distribution platforms for the card and working capital line. And we could talk a little bit. I see in your highlight you have there, how to build culture. We could talk a little bit about culture, especially because at this point we're virtual, right? Everybody's working from home or distributed widely across the U.S., and we have a very large offshore presence. I have more people sitting in one office together offshore than I do anywhere in the U.S. So it's a different country, different culture, and some
Yep.
of this might be interesting. But happy to talk about wherever the conversation takes you.
So, could you maybe just explain a little bit more about the relationship between, if I understood you correctly, the legacy company and this business?
Yeah, sure. We had a legacy company still exists. It's Pro Capital Business Funding Classic. I'm not familiar. I don't know if you're how familiar you or your audience is with the nomenclature, but a classic merchant cash advance company. It was purchased by P Fund back in 2015. It was a smallish company at the point with very traditional for that industry modes of functioning. I took it over, and probably within the first year or so, had to do something about the culture. Ended up being pretty drastic. And then, in addition to that, the underpinnings for the whole investment thesis fell apart, right? Which was there was really no barriers to entry in that industry. It became crowded very quickly. I had to figure out, where do you go from there? And there were certain core elements to the business that were highly attractive in building new technology around, particularly machine learning scores for credit that are where it was, cutting edge at that point. Now it's more, it's certainly becoming more pervasive. But the good thing about what we were doing was there were very quick credit cycles, meaning the amount of signal that you got in comparison to what you would think of as a mortgage. Mortgage, knowing whether somebody's going to pay the 30-year mortgage, it may take you 5 years before you know whatever you innovated worked or did not work. It takes a long time to see. If you're doing something where there is a daily ACH pull and you see whether across your entire portfolio people are paying or not paying, you get a very quick signal as to whatever you're innovating, whatever you're trying to create is either working or not working, right? So it's a great lab for the creation of new product or creation of alternative credit scoring, which is what we hunkered down and did. Launched Revenued in 2020, right into the teeth of the perfect storm of COVID, and that was an epic journey onto itself because we pivoted at that point, and we ended up originating about 4 billion plus in PPP loans on behalf of a bank partner. Processed about a million PPP applications with really a platform that was band-aided together, duct taped together because nobody had a platform built for doing
Hmm.
right. We had a platform that was built to originate lines of credit and credit cards for small businesses. So we had to repurpose everything, but the company would not be around if we hadn't done that. But it was certainly interesting, like in the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times.
Right.
So
So just going
yeah,
back
sure.
a little further on your personal leadership journey, you mentioned that you've done work in different. I mean, it sounds like it's all kind of finance related in some way or another,
It,
but
it, you know, it's
just
it's
curious, like if there are particular elements along your journey that made you particularly well suited to figure out how to leverage the technology in the legacy business and then navigate through the whole
no,
COVID
no,
situation, et
no.
cetera.
I don't mean this as a joke, but probably the only thing that was useful was having read a lot of sci-fi as a kid and having a good imagination. But I mean, like, it was I dropped into my role coming out of doing banking and consulting. There was no reason to suppose that I would be able to do what I was doing. It was an asynchronous, it was an atypical, abrupt,
Yeah.
transition. So you might have met me beforehand and said creative guy, analytical, but I think you work in headhunting. If you've been giving me the interview for the slot as CEO in the company, you would have said interesting guy, but like where's the track record? Where's the experience? I don't
Yeah.
know why we would drop him into doing that. So I would say that was a very not usual career trajectory.
Would you say that there was one particular like high pressure decision or one particular leadership decision you made that kind of um, helped you set your feet, or was it more a series of small steps?
Uh, it was pressure cooker from day one. I would say that was probably, 5 or 10 large decisions and then many small decisions, but very often it was non-incremental. It was a lot of crisis management, a lot of having to reinvent on the fly.
Yeah.
I used to tell my people all the time that, we have to really build the plane while flying it, which is a hairy thing to do.
Yeah.
Uh, and there were numerous times where our survival was not obvious. It was not a small, couple of decisions one after another that led to it. Um, it was certainly there was nothing looking at us at that point that would have said, hey, these guys would be 5 times larger today and being an entirely different space, though adjacent to it, with a different product set and whiz bang cutting edge technology. Nothing would have said that. You wouldn't have bet that that's where we would end up.
Yeah. And is there
Sorry,
anything?
sorry, no good. There's no good lesson here.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Is there anything in particular about um, sci-fi, other than just in general, sort of
Uh,
creative mind, as you said, or anything in particular that
yeah,
sci-fi
like
brings to the
I, I,
table?
I was always captured by, what can technology do? What's the use case? How whatever the reality you're looking at doesn't have to look that way, right? So some of it is throwing stuff against the wall and doesn't necessarily work. But sometimes you can look at something and say, hey, this is a huge opportunity. Back of the envelope, if you solve this, it's a big deal. And it seems like the tools are there to do that. I mean, there's stuff like that. I'm constantly reading about AI these days. Like I spend literally, 2 hours a day I have
Yeah.
devoted to following whatever's going on in AI and pushing for AI adoption. I am by no means a technical person, right? I cannot, sit there and program using Vine or something, right? I'm not going to sit there and figure out how I'm coding with it. But nonetheless, like when you see an opportunity and you say, hey, if this and this happens, it's going to totally be an upheaval in our field.
Yeah.
And can we get there? And can you go there? So look, that's a little bit just being creative, plus slotting it into or aligning it with what is clearly taking away the imagination, just the back and envelope creative tools non-creative tools, just the analytical tools, is a large addressable market and something that you don't see anybody doing right now.
So I noticed with yesterday's, I think it was yesterday's announcement by OpenAI of the ability to kind of run models on your own hardware.
Right.
It sounds like that potentially opens up some opportunities for regulated industries like you're in a way that if you're constantly um, kind of putting things back and forth kind of out into the broader ecosystem,
Like
you may not
there's
have to worry about the risk so much. I'm just curious, have you started thinking about that yet?
like the thing that I think about every day is stuff that I play with myself, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any hobbies, but a couple of months ago, I became afflicted with a watch obsession, right? So I'm on YouTube, I'm watching some influencers, I'm getting educated,
Yeah.
and I decide like, okay, I want to know about something. So I go to ChatGPT and I start, like, you can never go back. Meaning
Yeah.
your shopping is totally revolutionized. Your product
Yeah.
selection, how you're going to determine which is best, comparative shopping, and everything like that. You are not going to your classic shopping engine, right? That you would have looked at, or an affiliate or similar, right?
Yeah.
You are now going to be going to your AI, whichever AI you favor. You're going to be asking it a dozen questions. It's going to be responding, and they're already incorporating, actual product selection and the ability to execute. Forget about agentic stuff where you're actually pulling out an agent and it's buying
Yeah.
food or anything like that. I'm just talking about regular shopping. When I do straw poll internally, because like most of my staff is much younger than me, I say, guys, like, when you shop for clothing or something like that, are you using AI now? Every hand goes up.
Yeah.
Like there is nobody under 35 who is not now using AI. I wouldn't say exclusively, but probably predominantly for shopping.
Yeah.
And when you layer that on top of financial services, you look at it and go like, who is going to find their next and fill in the blank, right? Whether it's bank account or a place to deposit or stuff like, their mortgage or the car insurance or whatever, right? Who's going to find that without going to AI first? And what
Yeah.
is the
Yeah. It's interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
yeah,
but
yeah.
to your point, I had something pop up that was offering me some card, and so I threw it in. I have tried a lot of different of the generative AI tools, but I've kind of defaulted into using ChatGPT for the most part. So I threw it in, and I was like, "All right, is this actually a good deal or what?" And it basically came back and was like, "It's okay, but look at these three." Like, I didn't even ask it to look for alternatives. It just took it upon itself to go look for alternatives.
It does that. It's super helpful. It starts giving alternatives. It's not reliable, meaning it will occasionally hallucinate,
Yep.
tells on something. Numbers, like, this is going back a month, the particular example. But, when I ask it, I'm a small business, compare and contrast the different offers I might have for my credit card processing, which, by the way, we don't currently offer. We partner with some processing companies, but so I'm neutral on this, right? So I say like, and I give it the facts, right, and it will come back with 6 or 7 alternatives. When I ask it to run scenarios, and this is going back a month, admittedly it might be better now.
Right.
Um, it was fudging the math by an order of magnitude of 10x. Like it was screwing up a decimal point,
Yep.
right? So you couldn't trust it for that. But they are starting to win math medals and similar in very close to human, superb expert level. So I imagine the scenario running for a small business is going to be there very soon if it's not there already. And then where is everybody on product selection? How do you sell your products? How do you get in front of
Yeah.
consumers? Are you going to have to pay Chat GPT?
Yeah, well, the search engines, I guess, are starting to index chats now, so that's also interesting. By the way, on the hallucination front,
Yeah,
not so much the math front, but I stumble across in my own research a prompt that you can, um, essentially save into the permanent memory of whichever engine you're using, and
Mm,
it's again, I don't want to sort of use the technical language, but
mm,
I have found it has significantly reduced the hallucination factor. It basically, I think the essence of it is like, unless you can, confirm this is real, then
mhm.
don't put it in effectively, or say don't have the data behind it, essentially.
Cool.
So maybe I'll shoot that over to you as a follow up if you're curious about it. But I found that's actually helped a bit. Um, so maybe just shifting gears a little bit right now, in terms of revenue, like what particular market gap are you most focused on trying to fill right now, or problem are you trying to solve right now?
Sure. So I would say that we're the primary go-to for a small business owner who has a FICO score below 680, right? And wants larger access to capital. And we're also, again, this is non-bank financing. Banks
Yeah.
are doing whatever they're doing. Um, and also probably the large ticket guys, right? So if you're a business, you're looking for $500,000 to $1 million. Most of the fintechs top out at 150, 200K maximum. Will scale up to a million, and that is really our market. So many of our partners or others are sort of layering in different solutions, right? So they'll say, oh, this guy is perfect for this. This guy is perfect for this. What are these guys good for? They'll slot us in and say, okay, like if we have a population that we have good coverage for like a double A borrower, but we're looking for somebody who has a FICO below 680, who's the go-to? Or they'll say, even for a double A borrower, they're topping out at 150 to $200,000 working capital line. We're looking for somebody that's fintech enabled that will go up to $1 million. That's really where we find our opportunity.
And will you, and just so I understand, will you take the whole line, or will they layer together like you plus someone else in a combination?
It's not syndication deals.
Okay, got
It's
it.
it's all us, and we put it on our balance sheet. We securitize. It's generally not like club deals.
Got it.
It's not efficient to do it as a club deal anyway. These are very small. In the scheme of things, they're not $100 million bank syndication. So
And so how much of this, I guess, right from the origination through the underwriting and then ultimately, um, making the credit available, how much of it is an automated process now, and how much is, manual or some level of human in the loop?
great question. It's interesting because it's really a hybrid model. I would say that on some transactions it's end to end, right? But at a certain dollar amount, we want to have a human being having eyeballs on it, right? So at least for onboarding, maintenance might be fully automated beyond that point, right?
Uh-huh.
So think of it as not the Tesla fully automated, right? But more like a GM Super Cruiser,
Mhm.
right? It's like, it's fine. And once you turn it on, you're on the highway. It's basically going to keep you in the lane. And if you go out of the lane, it's going to wake you up, right? That's sort of where it's up to, which is a real strength on the ability to underwrite large deals, because the data set gets a lot thinner, right? The larger the size transaction is. Like we might have, data on 300,000, 30K or less lines, right? When you get over 30K, there's X number less. When you get over 500K, it starts looking like Mount Everest from a small business lender's perspective, right? At that point, how much data do you have about how many transactions, right? You might have 3,000 or something like that. You're not going to build very robust models that are going to, you're going to say, great, like make a 500K decision yourself, right? So it's actually helpful having human beings. It's also helpful in the development of models because if you're not purely black boxing it, you can ask a human being, say, look at this. This is the result on these 100. Does it smell right to you or not?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, you're not locked into just a bunch of quants who are going like, the math says that this works and just do it. We don't end up like Renaissance Capital. Not Renaissance. It wasn't Renaissance. Who are the guys who blew up? Zero. Renaissance actually does quite well. It's zero something. There was who was it? A big blow up of a gigantic hedge fund.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't think of the name off the top.
Yeah, Renaissance actually makes the black box stuff work.
Yeah. So let me ask you, sort of expanding that out a bit, just to think about your organization today, and like have you thought about the future of the org chart in terms of not just onshore offshore, but now sort of onshore offshore agentic or onshore offshore augmented?
I've thought about it. I've done very little about it. Meaning, I think that eventually will be very disruptive because I've seen in our business, for example, when we first started, we had what we called scrubbers, right? So those were people that would look at bank statements. And in those days, it was actually PDFs of bank statements. It wasn't even digitized yet. And they would extract the high level, like most important information. And that would be used to make a presumptive early credit decision of whether this was a discard or worthy of looking at further. And it would get then funneled into human underwriters, and those human underwriters would be looking at a digest, and then they'd be able to pull out the primary information as a supplement, right? So we had 10 people at that level of scale, which is much more than we are. It was 10 people fully occupied sitting in an office in Manhattan doing this, right? And for them, it was a great leg up because they were generally right out of college. They would go on from that to their first analyst position in a larger bank, right? They'd be able to write your data credit analyst, and you did that. And they actually had some familiarity because of the work with what bank statements look like, what underlying cash flows look like. It wasn't necessarily apples to apples to what they were doing, but it was good. It was a good first job experience. It was still pretty expensive for us in the scheme of things, having people doing that. That's totally gone today, right? That's totally digital. That's like all machine learning models. That's all ingested, digitally converted, even if it's a PDF it's been digitized by other people. There's no human beings doing that anymore. So you've eliminated, 10 jobs of people sitting there at a current scale would probably be 50 or 60 people. And even if you, moved it offshore, that's 50, 60 people, human beings employed somewhere. And you've totally taken that out. Now, as you continue and you move into, further skilled jobs, underwriting and similar, right, you start restricting the number of people you need. Right, we're about to roll out our first true, not machine learning, but LLM based project, which has taken quite a while to get through and to, believe it or not, not so complicated, but in our onboarding funnel, right, do the basic Q&A that an onboarding salesperson would do. General basic questions about the product, right? Stick it into your funnel. So now it's self-service, right? It wasn't even so much like eliminating a salesperson as much as a lot of people in the middle of the night, they want the convenience of actually getting the answer, right? And sometimes you don't want to talk to a pushy salesperson. You just want to be able to know what is the answer for that product feature. And the product is not the simplest product in the world. It has some complexities. So we're about to roll out our first LLM that we think is okay to let out in the wild. The first couple of iterations where you're saying things like, sure, the product is free. It does not cost anything.
Right.
You'll never have to pay any charges.
Right. Right. So, so just shifting gears a little bit, just thinking about talent. So I'm curious about, like, do you have any methodologies or tricks, probably isn't the right word, but ways that you assess leadership potential when you're making more senior hires, and do you see that changing at all?
That's a
In terms,
great that's a
yeah.
great question. That's a great question because I am at the same time really great at that and really terrible at that. I know it's hard to be both at the same time, but but I, I have assembled through trial and error over X number of years. I have assembled a great management team that I really like. That gets along really well. It's a good cultural fit, and that has accomplished all the stuff that we've accomplished together. So I haven't gotten it so badly wrong. But in specific instances, I mean, I have a great chief revenue officer who's now with me for 5 years plus, but was he was the fifth person in that slot, right? And like, did I smell it coming? No. Like each time the hire was somebody who on paper, um, I have a if we have time at the end, I'll tell you a very unflattering story about myself
Okay.
and a mistake like this. But true but bizarre story. Anyway, but you know, I didn't see it coming on paper. It was classic. I hired your resume and I got you, right? And on
Yeah.
paper it was good. I'm not the sole interviewer. There were people we put through like 5 layers of interviews with different people in the organization, right? And nonetheless, like there's stuff that you just don't see coming out of nowhere. Um, and some of that, I mean, I don't know that there's any great predictive model for it. So in terms of just pure talent selection, I'd like to say we select for very bright, non-political people, right? Who are like a culture that is pretty flat. That is, I like to say it's startup in terms of everything other than credit, right? Credit is very East Coast. The rest of it can be West Coast. When you go
Yeah.
fast and break things and credit doesn't work, you end up
Right.
you end up getting broke. You go
Yeah.
broke
Right.
versus breaking the paradigm. It doesn't really work in lending businesses. Great mantra, but not for lending businesses. So other than credit, yeah, I say, guys, do not be scared to experiment, right? I'm never going to say I told you so or anything like that. We really know nothing until we try it, right? And, be very open to taking information or, ideas from anybody, especially offshore where we're operating in a much more hierarchical society that is used to like totally not that. Like you sort of have to, people don't really believe it. They think you're it's some type of entrapment.
Right.
They're going to the gulag if they actually express themselves, right? So you have to really work hard at that one. But uh, I wish I had the magic formula. I wish I had here's the test, and
And and
and that
and
gets.
just out of curiosity, as you rotated through those five, was it the domain expertise? Was it the cultural fit? Was it the ability to move at the speed you guys needed to move? Was it
Listen, one of
some
them, one of
no
them,
no no, no thread?
uh, one, one of them, unfortunately, was something that hit the radar screen of everybody not so long ago, right? The Me Too movement.
Got
So
it.
how you see that one coming? Don't know how you see that one coming, right? But obviously intolerable,
Yeah.
and to our credit, the person did not, once we knew anything from the start date to the investigation being completed was less than a week, and he was done,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, you have to have a culture that does not tolerate that at all. But Can you know that beforehand?
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know,
there's some things now that look at social media and some other things as opposed to
uh,
traditional historical background checks, but even so, something like that.
we look at social media. I mean, I have an investigative team that I use for diligence on larger deals.
Yeah.
Actually are looking at people. We're not blindsided with people's social media. If somebody had the particularly obnoxious trail on social media, we were going to find it,
Yeah.
identify it, and they were not going to be hired. But I mean, New York's change in what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do in interviews definitely was
Yeah.
was was inhibiting, because you couldn't even do a criminal check
Right.
before deciding whether you're going to offer them the job or not. Right. Yeah. So you're always playing catch up on that one. Not
Yeah.
not the not
Absolutely.
the not the easiest thing to work around.
So just, I know we're sort of up to 2:30. I don't know if you have a hard stop or can
I
do
don't have
one or two
I
more
don't have I
questions,
don't have, I don't have hard stuff.
um, and so, I'm just curious, like if there was one talent challenge in your organization today that you sort of had a blank check to fix, what would you try to solve?
Well, right now we're in the hunt for a VP to lead partnerships. Right now we're looking for a head of partnerships. That is, I'm busy interviewing. We're running a search for that as we speak, to try and find the right person. We have our initial, toehold, foothold. We have enough for case studies and the rest. I mean, the organization scaled, but not in strategic partnerships, and we think we're way underdeveloped in that space. It aggravates me to no end that we're behind on that, and we're actively searching for that. And I'm busy
Is
interviewing.
that and does that sort of get into the world of embedded finance
Sure,
and
absolutely, you hit on the nose, right? Right. So, today, if you're a VC, the standard playbook that you're going to go to, if you have a vertical SaaS company in your portfolio, for example, let's say you're the go-to for pediatricians or something like that. So the first thing you tell your company is take a look at your revenue stream. What do you think is going to happen if you bolt on payments? Right. So everybody walks into the doctor's office and wants to use their credit card now, can use our terminals, give the doctor a better deal. It's a little stickier than just running their practice. You're going to be able to make 100 basis points on all that revenue stream. All of a sudden, you might be making double what you were making off of the monthly subscription alone, right? Next part of the playbook is they say, oh, what if the doctor needs working capital? In my example of the physician, they'll probably go to consumer finance first, and we'll say, what if somebody can't afford to pay for especially cosmetic surgery or something like
yeah,
that? Would you like to enable their patients to have payment plans? So you'll do that. If you were running a VSaaS that was, let's say, home improvement, that's where you would go. You'd say, someone wants to put in 30K in fixing their home, right? Do you want to give the contractor the ability when they're standing there with their clipboard to go like, hey, I can get you the 30K and here's the terms instantly,
right.
right? So all of a sudden, that one-dimensional subscription revenue has now turned into many different silos. And the first one is typically payments, working capital, payroll, business insurance, right? If you're a consumer, flowing it through to the consumer as well. So people are now looking at the 360 and trying to figure out, like, if you own the customer, and what does that mean? Who owns the customer? What can you be doing with them, and the repercussions of it? Because what if they have an unhappy customer experience with any of these other pieces that you now bolted onto your core offering, right? If you're Gusto, for example, where offers working capital, right?
Yep.
They're now starting to offer working capital at Toast, right? Let's say you default on that partner who is providing the working capital, and they're now shutting you down, or they're chasing you. All of a sudden, Toast or Gusto, whoever runs the VSaaS, has an unhappy customer who's getting online and telling everybody how horrible Toast Capital or Gusto Capital, whoever it is, They're losing them as a customer, and maybe it's not worth it, right? So there's a lot to think through. But the embedded capital, the embedded finance piece in general is happening. It's happening fairly quickly, and I think AI sprinkled on top of it just gets faster adoption.
Anything else in terms of, for revenue in the next 12 months that you're particularly excited about?
I think we're really working on the AI advisory piece for product selection. We're thinking about it. We're working on it. We're trying to figure out the multi-product offering besides just our working capital lines, and how you build something that's a bit more holistic, because again, like 70% of the small businesses that are entering our top of the funnel that exist out in the US are not viable candidates for a minimum, $5,000-$10,000 working capital line. They're too small. They need something that's much smaller than that. That number and that much smaller product is quite possibly not viable as a standalone. Right? It may have to be stapled together with some other products. It may have to be that you offer them most of their financial life together, and how that fits together with what they might be living already, their sort of business life on whatever be SaaS platform and the rest. How that plays together, we are very interested in, and we're working it out. But excitement is that same. Every day waking up and growing your portfolio by 10%.
So going back to that sounds good. That'll compound quickly.
A month over month, a day over day.
No, but going back to your sort of smell test comment before,
Yeah.
and versus just the model says this, so we're doing this. Do you think there is today and will be sort of relationship banking, or that sort of model that, I don't know, I'm reading a novel, and it's dated, I don't know, probably 30-40 years ago, and talks about how someone goes into the bank and says, hey, can you I need a few bucks for something, can you anything you can get without doing a full credit analysis on me, and guy looks in the computer, looks at the accounts, and says, I can give you $5,000, and the guy says, oh, can you give me some, does that world exist?
Yeah, that world in banks certainly hasn't existed since Jimmy Stewart days. So like that, that is a myth. That doesn't exist. But I think we're clearly moving very quickly into a very divided, bifurcated universe of have and have-nots in terms of human touch versus AI, right? So look at other things that are not even financial services. Right? If you want to talk to a psychologist, you want to talk to a counselor, you want to get advice, dating advice, or something like that. Well, you can see if your health plan covers it. You can see if you can afford it, or you can go to one of the chatbots.
Yeah.
Right? And get something, which again, there are some specialized bots that are working on AI applied specifically to mental health or other things like that. I think that's great. I think it's a really good thing, right? Is it going to be the equivalent for someone on the more, not the average, but let's say a more gifted therapist who actually knows you? Is it going to be the equivalent of that? I don't think so. At least not in the next 10 years. Maybe eventually it gets better, but does the human being who actually has empathy, aided maybe with a bot for diagnosis that they're using as well, does that provide superior care? Of course, it's going to provide superior care. I have to think that actual empathy is worth something, at least to receive it, right? People know the difference. So are you going to get, two universes, one a high touch that actually involves human beings that are trained and skilled and able to deliver a superior, whatever it might be, financial services or anything else, versus, the proles. If you're going back to your sci-fi language,
Yeah.
the proles underneath the deck in the next 5 levels down, are they all interacting with AI and they don't get to speak to a human being? Probably. Look how hard it is to get a human being on the line today.
Yeah.
When you're calling about anything, you could sit there for 10 minutes till they let you through.
So Saul, this has been interesting conversation. Anything else you'd like to touch on before we wrap up?
No, that was great. Thank you so much.
All right, great. Well, Saul Lax, CEO of Revenue, thanks so much for joining the Decision Room.
My pleasure, Josh. Have a good one.
All right, take